profiles. RDF validation, data shapes, spin, the notion of being able to sort of say, this is the set of RDF that I need to solve a particular problem. This is becoming increasingly mainstream in a lot of decisions and a lot of discussions that are happening right now. And over the course of the next couple days, you'll hear a lot about this in terms of what's actually happening with different groups. But one of the interesting aspects that the Dublin Core has also basically provided is sort of really not only bringing together the set of practitioners, but because of that, being able to look beyond where the rest of the industry is at and think about what is coming next and what's needed next. In fact, we were discussing application profiles in the Dublin Core community, I believe as early as Tom and us driving to Ottawa in 2000. Right, 14 years ago. That's embarrassing for us, isn't it? Sorry. But it was, but it wasn't because we were terribly smart. It wasn't because, we had 14 hours in the car together. It was because as practitioners starting to use these technologies, you start to be able to understand where their limitations are, and you start to think about how to basically address solutions to that. And so now, in fact, part of the reason a lot of different groups are starting to realize this is actually an important area is because at a certain level, they're catching up to the library and metadata community that sort of has been thinking about this for quite some time. And we're going to see increasingly these kind of ideas woven into the very fabric of standards, and our job is to now then take these back and integrate them into the mainstream applications. I was trying to sort of capture some of the early design aspects that permutated the community and the creative tension that we had early on in this, and I couldn't quite basically nail it. And I went back actually to Dan Brickley's keynote a couple years ago, because I think he did actually a really good job actually capturing something that I couldn't articulate, but in a way that I think is just spot on. We had a really interesting creative tension that I think still to this day is actually important to recognize. And it's not a bad thing that it's a tension. It's actually quite a good thing. And Dan, I think, did just a brilliant job recognizing that there's this simple vocabulary semantics pragmatism. This notion that we don't want to spend a lot of time over-engineering something, that basically we need something that we can actually use now. But at the same time, we need it to be able to, on the second side of it, that one vocabulary can't capture it all. We need it to be able to evolve. We need it to be able to refine and extend this, and to allow other people to build on top of it. And that kind of creative tension, again, was very novel at the time, but it really was a very interesting and powerful way that summed up a lot of, another phrase that we used to throw around a lot at the Dublin Core, which is, make the simple things simple and the complex things possible. And when we start talking about profiles and we start talking about these principles of new things that we in the Dublin Core need to be focusing on, I'd like us to continue, if possible, that kind of creative tension between those two kinds of pragmatic views. There are simple things that we want to do. We do not want to over-engineer them to the point of not being able to do those simple things. But we also want to engineer things in a simple way that allows them to be extended, refined, and evolve over time. One of the things that was also a key part of the early Dublin Core, and one of the things that actually is important to recognize here, and one of the things that I think sometimes gets lost, is that while we were developing standards, the real value of what the Dublin Core provided was a social one, the community around it. It was a safe place that different stakeholders could come together and bang out ideas. It was a place where folks in the library community, the metadata, in the museum community, the archive community, the e-learning community could sort of come together and work out their differences. No other place existed, and still to this day, arguably, no other place exists where those kinds of different perspectives can come together. We've laid a lot of infrastructure since then in terms of open standards and enabling technologies, and we've learned a lot in the process. But one of the things that I think is just important to keep remembering here is it's not a product that's, we deliver products, but the products we delivered 20 years ago might be very different than the products of today. But it's that social process that we've